In this video, let's understand what is an ORM. ORM stands for Object to Relational Mapping or Object Relational Mapping. The object part is the one that you use with your programming languages like Python, C#. We will have the classes which will act as the object. This is the Relational Database Management System or RDBMS like MS SQL Server or MySQL or any other database that you want to use. Finally, the mapping part. Mapping is the part which bridges between the object and the tables. This will actually map your objects and tables together and vice versa. ORM is a technique that lets you query and manipulate data from a database using an object-oriented paradigm. When talking about ORM, most people are referring to a library that implements the object relational mapping technique, hence the phrase ORM. Unless you have worked exclusively with NoSQL databases, you've likely written your fair share of SQL language queries. They usually look something like this, which you will be using without an ORM. You will be writing your SQL query and then you'll be executing them, retrieving the data, and storing them. This is how a typical non-ORM system would retrieve data from. With the help of ORM, these can be simplified into a single line of code. Now do not go with the syntax here. Syntax depends on ORM, but usually an ORM will simplify something like this, in which book table will be the object, on that you'll execute a query, and in the parameter you can have where clause or other condition. So you can see how simplified it is with the help of an ORM. Object relational mapping is the idea of being able to write queries like the one here, as well as much more complicated ones using the object-oriented paradigm of your preferred programming language. Long story short, we are trying to interact with our database using our language of choice instead of SQL. Here's where Object Relational Mapper comes in picture. When most people say ORM, they are referring to library that implements this technique. And you can see using our imaginary ORM library to execute the same select query, except we can write it in a language which we are using rather than writing it in SQL. We can use the same language we know and love and also abstract away some of the complexities of interfacing with the database. That being said, let's also take a look at few of the advantages of ORM. You get to write the language that you are already using right now. SQL is ridiculously powerful language, but most of us don't write in it often. We do, however, tend to be much more fluent in one language or another, and being able to leverage that language is really awesome. It also abstracts away the database system, so switching from MS SQL or SQLite to your flavor could be easy. That being said, many of the queries that you write with the help of ORM will perform better than if you wrote them yourself. That is because when we write all the queries, not necessarily every time we go into the details of optimizing every small execution, but ORM has certain rules that it has to follow, because of which it makes sure that the query is optimized. And then ORM also saves you time as compared to writing the SQL and wrappers. You just use your link expressions with EF and everything will be done for you in the backend. ORM can also help you generate databases from your models and vice versa. So there are quite a few advantages, and because of that we'll be focusing on an ORM which is Entity Framework Core, which is cross-platform and open source ORM.